For centuries, sailors kept describing the same thing, and it made no sense. They didn't talk about a monster. They talked about an island that wasn't on any map, an island that moved. Men who spent their entire lives at sea. Men who knew every rock and current on the Norwegian coast. Swore they saw it. In 1752, a scientist wrote it down as fact. 100 years later, the scientific world called it a myth. And then something washed ashore. That changed the entire story. The people who feared it most weren't dreamers. They were Norwegian fishermen. The most practical people you could imagine. They knew the sea could kill them a dozen different ways. Storms, rocks, cold that stops your heart in minutes. But there was one thing they talked about differently. Quietly, carefully. They called it Kraken. And the strange part is how they described it. Not as a creature, as a place. Old Norse accounts say the same thing again and again. A mass rising from the water, wide enough that men mistook it for solid ground. Some claimed they landed on it, built fires, and felt it move beneath their feet. The ones who made it back never told the story the same way twice. Some said it was miles across. Others said you could see it from the shore. But every version shared one detail. It was always calm before it appeared. The sea would go silent, and the experienced sailors knew. That silence was the warning. In 1752, a bishop sat down and wrote something extraordinary. Erik Pontoppidan, Bishop of Bergen, Norway, a man of God, a man of science, a man who had no reason to lie. He wrote about a creature so large that sailors mistook it for an island. He gave it a name, Kraken, and he was serious. This wasn't folklore collected from peasants. This was a formal scientific description, published, distributed across Europe, read by kings and scholars. Pontoppidan described it in detail. A flat back rising from the water, the size of a small island, surrounded by something strange in the water. A thick, almost luminous slick that appeared before it surfaced. He said the greatest danger wasn't the creature itself. It was the whirlpool it created. When it descended back into the deep, ships didn't get grabbed. They got pulled down into nothing. And here's what nobody talks about. Pontoppidan wasn't alone. Other clergy, other scholars, were writing the same things from different coastlines, different countries, different languages, all describing the same creature. The ships didn't sink because of storms. The sailors knew storms. They knew how to read the sky, how to feel the water. These ships just disappeared. No wreckage, no bodies, no explanation. Bergen harbor records from the 1700s list dozens of vessels, left port, never arrived. And the ones who did make it back, the ones who survived, they all described the same thing. The water going still, completely still, in the middle of a storm. And then, something rising. One account from 1763 describes a fishing crew anchored off the Lofoten Islands. Night Watch saw what he thought was a reef emerging from the water. He called the others. By the time they all came on deck, it was moving. They cut the anchor and ran. The ones who didn't run in time didn't write accounts. Because here's the thing about the Kraken that nobody talks about. It didn't chase ships. It didn't need to. It just rose and let the whirlpool do the work. A creature so massive that simply existing on the surface was enough to destroy everything around it. By the 1700s, Europe was changing. The age of reason had arrived, and reason had no room for sea monsters. The scientists looked at Pontoppidan's work and smiled. The way educated men smile. When they think they know better, they had explanations. Giant squid, optical illusions, mass hysteria of uneducated sailors. Carl Linnaeus, the father of modern taxonomy, actually included the Kraken in his first edition of Systema Naturae in 1735. He called it microcosmos, a real species, a real animal. Then he removed it in the next edition without explanation. Just gone. And that's the part that gets me. He didn't say it didn't exist. He just stopped talking about it. The French naturalist Pierre Denis de Montfort went further. He collected sailor testimony. He mapped the encounters. He published his findings and was completely destroyed by the scientific community. Laughed out of academic circles. Died in poverty. Forgotten. But his maps showed something interesting. Every single encounter clustered in the same waters, off the Norwegian coast, again and again and again. Science said it wasn't real, but the ocean kept its secrets. In 1873, something washed ashore on the coast of Newfoundland. Not Norway this time. The other side of the Atlantic. Fishermen found it tangled in their nets. A creature unlike anything they had ever seen. Tentacles 30 feet long. Eyes the size of dinner plates. A beak strong enough to cut through rope like paper. They called the local reverend, Moses Harvey. He dragged it home, measured it, photographed it, and wrote to every scientist he knew. The response was immediate. This was real. This was documented. This was proof. The giant squid existed. And suddenly, every sailor who had ever been laughed at, every fisherman dismissed as drunk or mad, every account written off as folklore, was worth looking at again. Because if the giant squid was real, what else was real? The specimens kept coming. 1878, another one. 60 feet of tentacle. 1880, another. Scientists started measuring, started calculating. If these were juveniles, if these were small ones, how big did they actually get? The math was uncomfortable, because the sizes described by Pontoppidan, the sizes described by Norse sailors for centuries, were starting to look less impossible. And the ocean suddenly felt a lot deeper. In 2004, a Japanese research team did something no one had ever managed before. They photographed a living giant squid, in the wild, in the deep ocean, alive. The images went around the world in hours, and 2 years later, 2006, they filmed one, a living giant squid, brought to the surface. Still alive, still fighting. People watched the footage and went quiet, because this wasn't a decomposing body on a beach. This wasn't a sketch in an old book. This was real. Moving. Breathing. Looking back at the camera, 8 meters long, and scientists were quick to point out. This was small. This was a young one. The maximum recorded size of a giant squid. 13 meters, 43 feet. But the deep ocean starts at 200 meters and goes down to 11,000. We have explored less than 20% of it. Less than 20%. Think about that. Every encounter ever recorded, every ship that disappeared, every sailor who came back with stories no one believed. All of it happened in the top layer, the part we can actually reach. Whatever lives below that. Whatever has never been seen. Whatever has never needed to come up. We have no idea. And the ocean is very, very deep. Here is something that sounds impossible but is true. We have better maps of the surface of Mars than we have of our own ocean floor. Most of the deep sea has never been seen by human eyes. Not filmed, not mapped, not explored. And every time we send a camera down, we find something we didn't expect. Creatures that were called impossible, right up until the moment we filmed them. So when Norwegian fishermen 300 years ago described something massive in the water, we have to ask a fair question. Were they lying? Were they wrong? Or were they simply seeing a part of the ocean that science wouldn't catch up to for centuries? They didn't have submarines. They didn't have sonar. They didn't have the words science uses now. But they spent their whole lives watching that water, and they kept describing the same thing. The honest answer is the uncomfortable one. We still don't know everything that lives down there, because we still haven't looked. There is a place off the Norwegian coast where local fishermen still avoid certain waters, not because of monsters, because of stories their grandfathers told them, and a feeling they can't quite explain. The Kraken was never proven. No body was ever found. No photograph. No skeleton in a museum. But the giant squid was once a myth too, until 1873. And the ocean that created both legends is still there. We have explored less than a fifth of it. So maybe the real story was never about a monster at all. Maybe it was about how little we know, about the largest part of our own planet. The sailors saw something. We may never know exactly what. And the deep keeps its answer. For now.